What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be going over arrays and loops in Java. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you guys can stay up to date with all the content we're posting. I finally got a new mic, so my content should be much better moving forward. It's about time. Alright, let's get right into it. Let's start with arrays. So basically Java provides a whole bunch of data structures. A data structure is exactly what it sounds like. It's a structure that can hold data. So let's go ahead and declare our first array. You want to type the data type, let's go with int, followed by 2 brackets, then the variable name. You can also declare an array another way. Type the data type, int, then the variable name, then followed by brackets. Either way works, but the first way we declare the array is actually a best practice, not the second way, although they both work. So let's go ahead and create a function. Now let's actually create the array. Similar to how we create a new instance of a class, we need to use the new operator when creating a new array. So let's get that myArray variable equals new, then the data type again, followed by the size of the array in the brackets. Let's go with 3. So now we have myArray created with the size of 3. So now we can store 3 values in the array. We can go ahead and populate this array by setting them individually. So let's go ahead and set each index. So now we have an array with 3 values, 55, 25, and 200. Try to visualize the array like this. Each value has its own index. The first value in the array is index 0. The next one is index 1, after that 2, after that 3, and so on. So let's go ahead and print out that array just so you guys can see what it looks like. Let's go ahead and use the arrays toString method, and then you want to pass in myArray. Import that library, and let's log that. Now let's create our main method so we can actually run this class. I actually need to make this doSomething method static as well as the array because we're going to be calling this method from the main function, which is static. Okay, so now we're all set. Now let's call that doSomething method. Now right click on the class and run it. As you see in the output, we get 55, 25, and 200. Perfect. Now I'll show you an example using another data type. So let's change myArray2 to a string and make it static as well. Now let's take myArray2 and create a new array string of size 2. So it works exactly how it would for an int. Let's add 2 values to the array. Let's go ahead and output this as well. Just gonna copy this. Now go ahead and run your program again. As you see in the console, we get John Doe. So arrays are pretty fundamental, guys. And there's way more things that can be done with arrays. Arrays are very powerful within Java. So let's move right into loops. You have 3 kinds of loops. You have your for loop, your while loop, and your do while loop. So let's create a for loop. So what this is saying is we're gonna start at 0, and then we're gonna keep going until we hit 5. So let's just output I so you guys can see what's happening. Let's go ahead and run our program. As you see, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 get output in the console. This is because the first time the for loop gets ran, I is 0. The next time it gets ran, I is incremented due to the plus. So then I is going to be 1, and then 2, and then 3, and so on. So what stops the for loop is this condition. We use this for loop until I is less than 5, which is why we go from 0 to 4. Now if I were to increase from 5 to 10 and run this, we would get 0 through 9 in the console. For loops are also great for iterating over data. So let's go ahead and iterate over our array. I'm gonna cut this for loop and paste it below in the doSomething method. Now let's iterate through our array. So instead of iterating all the way to 10, we're gonna iterate until the size of the array. So let's do myArray.length. So now the for loop will run 3 times because our myArray is 3. There's 3 values in the array. So let's go ahead and print myArray I. Let's go ahead and run this. As you see in the console, we get 55, 25, and 200. The first time this for loop gets hit, we're outputting myArray 0 because I is 0. The next time it gets ran, we'll be outputting myArray 1, and then so on. So you can also populate an array in a for loop instead of doing it manually by each index. So let's go ahead and delete this stuff. So we're still creating an array of size 3. Now let's go ahead and populate that with 1, 2, and 3. Let's create a new variable. Now let's go ahead and set myArray I to the count. Next, we want to increment count. Now let's output myArray. Go ahead and run the program. As you see in the console, we get 0, 1, and 2. So say we weren't iterating until the size of the array. Say we were iterating larger than the array. So say we were iterating to 10 again. We still have an array of size 3. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. As you see, we get an exception. Array index out of bounds. This is because we're trying to access an index of the array that does not exist. Our array is only size 3. So the fourth time this for loop gets ran, it tries to insert a value into the array that doesn't exist. The array is too small. So it's really easy to get these exceptions working with arrays, guys. So be careful when using a for loop in an array. Let's undo that. So with loops, you also have loop control statements. You have your break statement and your continue statement. So let's say we were still iterating in the for loop until 10. Breaks come in handy in preventing us from getting an array index out of bounds exception. We can have a condition within the for loop that says something like if I is greater than the size of the array minus 1, break. Now let's go ahead and output that. Now let's go ahead and run this. As you see, we do not get an array index out of bounds exception. This is because the for loop only gets ran 3 times. Even though we're iterating until 10, the array only gets ran 3 times because we're checking to see what value I is. If I is greater than the size of the array, we're going to break out of that for loop, meaning it only gets ran 3 times. So no matter what we're iterating to, if we're breaking out at a certain point, it'll break for good. So this is great for preventing those exceptions. The next loop control statement you have is a continue statement. In contrast to a break statement, continue allows the for loop to keep running. So let's switch from break to continue and see if we get an exception. Let's go ahead and run it. As you see, we still get 0, 1, 2 in the output. But the main difference is how a break loop broke out of the array when I was greater than the size of the array, meaning it only ran 3 times. Continue will allow the for loop to keep running. So this for loop did indeed run 10 times, but we did not get an exception because each time that condition was met, we just continued past anything below that continue statement. So these loop control statements are great because it gives you basically full control of your for loops. And as of Java 5, there's also another for loop that looks way more elegant and simple. I'll go ahead and show you that. So this for loop will pretty much loop until we hit the size of the array or whatever collection we passed in. So let's go ahead and print I and see what happens. Go ahead and run your application. As you see, we get 0, 1, and 2. Each index value of the array gets printed. There's a time and a place for each of these for loops, guys, but keep them both in mind because you'll be required to use both at some point. So let's move on to a while loop. Let's get rid of all of this stuff. So a while loop can be declared like while certain condition and then open curly brace and then close curly brace. So let me show you an example of how a while loop works. Let's create a Boolean. We can say something like while my bool, while it's true, do something. Let's just output high while it's true. Now let's run this. As you see, we get high over and over and over again. This loop will never close until we tell it to. This is because my bool always stays true. It'll never stop and you'll eventually run out of memory. So let's go ahead and stop this. So it's important that you have conditions within your while loop. Let's create another int called count. Let's have some kind of condition in here that says when count is 5, break out of this loop. And let's increment count at the bottom of the loop. Now let's run this and see what happens. I'm sure you guys know what's gonna happen. As you see in the console, we get high 5 times. This is because once count is 5, we'll break out of that while loop so it doesn't run forever. In contrast to a break statement, you can say something like my bool equals false. Let's go ahead and run this. So in the output, you see 6 highs. This is because we don't break out of the loop. So previously, we outputted high to the console 5 times, then broke out of the loop. This time, we're setting my bool to false, so everything below that still gets called, which is why we're getting an extra high. But the while loop doesn't get ran again because my bool is now false, not true. So this loop only runs when my bool is true. Now that it's false, we'll be out of the loop completely. You also have a do while loop. It's essentially the same exact thing of a while loop. Let me show you. You type do, open curly brace, and then close curly brace. Below that is where you have your condition. While a certain condition, then a semicolon. So I can pass in my bool in here too. And then do everything that I was doing in this while loop. Let's paste that in the do. Let's get rid of this while loop above and run. We get the same exact thing, guys. So it's really up to you if you want to use a while loop or do while loop, but keep in mind that you do indeed have that option. Thanks for watching this video, guys. That's about it today. We covered loops and arrays. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you guys practice your new learned skills. Have a good one. I'm out of here. See ya.